Oh, hello Willow community and Happy New Year. I can't say anything more specific than that because I have no idea what day it is that you are watching this. So I want to start before we get into anything else by doing what we always do, which is some breathing, and it always helps. I don't care what day of the week it is and I don't know what month it is, but we have to breathe. So remember, you're smelling the soup and then blowing the soup. And you're trying to get those shoulders down. Let's do one more. Okay, thank you so much. So the reason that I don't know what day it is because Miss Carrie, Willow extraordinaire, has asked me to talk with you guys about some virtues, but because we don't know what the schedule is, because we're still in COVID times, I'm not really sure when this is going to air. So it could be that it makes it into February, which is loyalty. Might be that it waits until March, which is courage. So I'm going to be talking about both virtues together. And in fact, it's actually great because of the virtues that we are following this year, they are the ones that actually are most interconnected. It's almost as if I want to say, in order to be loyal requires an act of courage. And if you are trying to be courageous, you need loyalty to make that work. So I started racking my brains. I started thinking about February. I started thinking about Black History Month and what could be something to talk about that demonstrates loyalty and courage, but the civil rights movement and specifically counters, luncheons, sit-ins. Okay. Before I even get into that, I want to tell you something, and this might be a surprise to some of you, so listen carefully. I'm a nerd. I've been a nerd for my whole life, and unapologetically so. So I am just someone who is interested in everything. Anytime I travel, and I encourage you guys to do this, in some of my classes, you guys, we've talked about this, any city you go to a local museum. It's not about art, it's not boring. There are so many interesting museums all over the country. For example, you go to Las Vegas, go to the Neon Museum. What's the Neon Museum? It is a boneyard in the desert of all of the signs from all of the casinos and hotels that no longer exist. It's the coolest thing ever. You're in Cleveland? Oh, come on. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? You want to see Jimi Hendrix's couch? You want to see John Lennon's green card? Bruce Springsteen's song notebook? All there. Go for it. And when I am in Washington, D.C., the museum I go to, while everyone's running to the Air and Space Museum for reasons that are clear to me, not at all, is the Museum of American History. Its nickname is America's Attic. It collects artifacts that are meaningful and important to what makes America culturally. What can you find in there? You can find the original Kermit the Frog Muppet. You can find Dorothy's shoes from Wizard of Oz. You can find, are you ready for this? The actual Star-Spangled Banner, the actual flag that inspired Francis Scott Key to make that song. I mean, it's amazing. They also have, for those of you who are old enough to remember, Julia Child. She was an influential, revolutionized cooking in American culture. When she retired, the Smithsonian took her kitchen. Her kitchen is on display. And where the walls are, where her pots and pans used to be, they put the outlines of the pots so that you can imagine it in a 360 environment. It's incredible. Now, the great thing about the museum is there are some pieces that are on permanent display and some pieces that rotate. So every time you go back, it's a new experience. Something that is permanently on display are 4 stools from a piece of counter. And they are the stools, and I get all choked up because I'm so proud of us. They're the stools that started the civil rights movement. Because on February 1st, 1960, 4 friends showed courage and needed each other in their loyalty of friendship to sit at that lunch counter in the Woolworth in Greensboro, North Carolina. Their names are, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget, Ezell Blair Jr., he has since changed his name, but culturally speaking at the time that was his name, David Richmond, Franklin McCain, and Joseph McNeil. They were 4 freshman college students. They were friends. The 2 of them were roommates, 2 of them were other friends, and they shopped at the Woolworth. And you see, that's the important thing. Boys and girls, the answer to all of your questions is money. And so the Woolworth was happy to have people of color shop there. They just couldn't eat there. They couldn't use the water fountains there. In the town, the swimming pool was whites only. And there were signs. There were signs that said this. And they said, we're allowed to shop here, but I can't get a soda. And so they sat down. That's all they did, peaceful protest. They sat and ordered a donut, cup of coffee, cream on the side. And they didn't get it. And they went back the next day. And I'm going to not read you any books. I have some great books if you're interested in learning more about this. Freedom on the Menu, Make a Change, and really the best one of the lot, Sit In. And I love the subtitle, How 4 Friends Stood Up by Sitting Down. The illustrations are awesome. But I'm leaving it up to you if you want to ask your parents to look at it, and parents if you want to see some of the content, because it was an ugly time. It was an ugly time. And the only way it worked was because they had the courage to sit there and not fight back. Because you see, more people joined in. And that also meant more protesters showed up. And the protesters were not happy because things were changing. And some people can absorb change and embrace change and welcome change, and other people reject it. So while those kids were sitting there doing nothing, some of them were doing their homework, right? These were all students in high school and college. They had coffee, hot pots of coffee poured on them. The ketchup wasn't for the French fries, it was for them. Pepper thrown in their faces. And of course, it wasn't just things that were thrown at them, words were as well. And they sat there. Here's the extraordinary thing. And adults, if you're listening, Malcolm Gladwell, I can't stop talking about him, wrote an incredible article, and it's actually in public domain, called Small Changes. You can find it on the internet. And in just 7 months, that counter was desegregated, and I'm just checking my notes here. And within 2 months, so February 1st, this started, 1960, by April, the sit-in movement had spread to 55 cities in 13 states. This is before social media, ladies and gentlemen. So you needed a network of loyal people. You needed the courage to talk about this to other people for it to work. And 7 months later, at the end of July of 1960, the counter was desegregated. No fanfare, they simply took down the sign. And desegregation was starting everywhere. And then it led to the Equal Rights Act, and then it led to schools changing. It was revolutionary. And it started with 4 young men who sat down at a stool and stood up by sitting down, as the subtitle says. What I love about this, little trivia, who were the first people who were served at that Woolworth in Greensboro? People of color who worked there. The employees who were never allowed to sit at that counter were the first to be served. I get so choked up because we have such promise. You guys have such promise. Imagine what you can do. It's so exciting. So that's why I want you to go see museums. I want you to see these counters. And if you're in Greensboro, North Carolina, I'd like you to stop by, and I wrote it down so I'd get the name, the International Civil Rights Museum. And do you know where it's housed? In a very familiar Woolworth building downtown. Thanks so much for listening, and good luck. We're almost through all of this. Have a great day.